So as a class, we're going to be doing a Padlet, which everybody can join. So if you're online this morning, you can certainly join our class Padlet, where we're going to be brainstorming some items that fit under the different financial categories of leisure, learning, luxury, and lifestyle. And we're going to hopefully have some items that are personal interest. But for those of you that are learning at home and aren't up for our Padlet session, we're just going to put together a few examples, and certainly you can add to your own list. So an example of a leisure item. So, when we're doing leisurely things by ourselves or with friends, an example might be if you wanted to get into kayaking. So a kayak might be an item that you would need. Maybe you like to bike and you need a new bike, maybe running shoes for walks, maybe even a weekend in Toronto would be leisurely to you, maybe a dinner out. Okay, so those are just some examples, and you can put your own on. In terms of learning, the things that we would have underneath there would be something like post-secondary education. Okay, so that's tuition for college or university. It could be other programs that you're working on a certificate. It could be apprenticeship classes. Maybe in terms of learning, you want to take an art class at the local art studio. Maybe there's a particular online course that you've been interested in that you would like to do as well. So anything that has to do with learning something new, a new skill, we can put under there. Okay. So then for luxury, and again, a lot of these items could overlap into different areas. So luxury items, that might be big things that are certainly a luxury, not every day. So maybe on your list, you would have something like a particular car, nice car. Nice car means different things to different people. Maybe, your nice car is an old classic car that you want to fix up, or maybe your nice car is something brand new. Other luxury items that people might have on their list, maybe jewelry, if that's your thing, or clothing from a particular place or a designer. Travel would certainly be a luxury item, especially if it was a big trip. Maybe you want some sort of lavish home that's very luxurious. Your list will be different from the person next to you. Okay. So then, lifestyle, when we think about our lifestyle, maybe you're really into going to the gym. So, a gym membership. Again, we could put home under this one. What type of particular home do you want? Maybe you want to live in a van. Maybe you want a nice house that's on the water or in a certain community. That could go under lifestyle as well. Travel could also go under lifestyle if that's something that you're interested in doing on a regular basis. Again, a lot of these things can go in either category. Maybe transportation. Are you going to be living downtown, the downtown lifestyle where you are taking TTC all the time? Are you going to be commuting from a certain community? Again, there's multiple different categories that you could put these items under, and this is just kind of a sample. All right, so now I want you to take a few minutes to choose a financial goal category that's most important to you. So, whether it's leisure, learning, luxury, or lifestyle. And depending on where everybody is in their life right now and kind of what they see themselves doing in the next couple years, that would be your goal, right? And everybody's is going to be different. So, take a few minutes, choose your goal, and explain why. So now we're going to take a look at some definitions. So make sure that you have your sheet out from your duotang and you're filling in the definitions as we go through them. So the first one we say is a discretionary expense. So discretionary means that it's not essential. So us spending money on it is up to our discretion. Okay, so a discretionary expense we will define as expenses relating to non-essential items or to items that are more expensive than necessary. So to non-essential essential items or to items that are more expensive than necessary. Okay, so the opposite of that is our non-discretionary expenses. So these are expenses that we have to pay. So this is an expense an individual must pay. Okay, so something like rent, we would consider, we can actually just put an example here. Rent would be considered a non-discretionary expense. You have to pay it. Okay, there's no getting around that. Okay, a fixed expense, we've already talked about fixed and variable. So this is an expense that does not change. And again, we talked about that in our last unit um, when we were talking about accommodations. So for an example in this one would be rent again. So your rent stays the same every month. It might change the following year as increases happen, but in general, we still describe that as a fixed expense because month to month it doesn't change, okay? So then a variable expense is a change that, or an expense that changes or fluctuates. So an expense that changes or fluctuates. Okay. And so for that, maybe you would have your food expenses, right? That's going to change bit by bit, month to month. All right. So now let's take a look at some of those goals that we identified when we were brainstorming and put them as either non discretionary. Okay, something we have to do, discretionary, a want, or like it would be nice to have, and then describe whether they're fixed or variable. Okay, so again, your list might be different than mine, and so you're welcome to go ahead and put your examples on here, but we'll just go through a couple of them together so that you have an idea of what, again, is non discretionary versus discretionary, and then fixed or variable. So let's start off with if one of my goals was to get a kayak. Obviously, that's something that I don't need. Okay, so this would be our discretionary, okay, item. And then whether or not this is fixed or variable kind of depends how you end up paying for that kayak. So sometimes when you buy big items, you can do like a monthly payment. So if it was a monthly payment, it might be fixed. So maybe it's monthly fixed. Or maybe you just paid it off in one go. You could say that it's variable. It's not like an ongoing payment though. So, but it would depend, it would change based on what kind of kayak you bought. Okay. So let's say another example would be dinners out. Okay. Or going out to a restaurant. So this is a discretionary. It's a want or like nice to have. And then obviously this would be variable. Okay, because this would change depending on what restaurant I go to, and maybe some months I go out more often than others. Okay, let's go to post secondary education. Okay, I would say that this is a must have. So, again, this is when you've kind of already committed to it and signed up. So, if this is one of your financial goals, I mean, obviously, not everybody has to go to post secondary education. So, if it's not on your list, that's fine. Some people are. going right into a workplace or have their own personal company or family company. There's a lot of different things that people do nowadays. And so, but if you have committed and signed up for post-secondary education, then it's something that you would have to pay for. Okay. And so this would be a fixed cost because you would pay the same amount, every month or based on your semesters, okay, your tuitions. And it would be like we consider fixed amounts that we know about, okay? Okay, so let's take a look at some of the luxury items. Let's say a nice car. Okay, so luxury items tend to be discretionary, okay? Now, whether or not it's fixed or variable, it's most likely going to be fixed because you'd have a payment, okay? And that payment would be the same every week or every month, depending on how you work that out. All right, we could also do another luxury item, maybe if you're into clothing and one of your goals is to, get a bunch of nice clothing. I would say that this is also discretionary and this would be a variable cost because it would change. Okay, so let's take a look at lifestyle ones. So personal financial goals, maybe your gym membership. Now, this could also go in leisure, I suppose. So my gym membership, again, would be discretionary, and this would probably be a fixed amount that you would pay monthly. Okay, let's do home in Toronto. So maybe you're going to school in Toronto and you are paying, whether it's rent or mortgage in Toronto. I would say that these are a must have. So if you're, whatever home it is that you're living in, whatever that goal is to have that home, you need somewhere to live. Okay. And your rent, your mortgage would be a fixed cost. So this should give you an idea of where these financial goals fit in. Let's move on and take a look at a case study now. So we're going to take a look at case study A. All of you will do your own case study, so either case study B, C, D, or E. And today we're just looking at expenses. So the first thing we're going to do is read through this case study and use our highlighter to highlight any of the expenses that come out in the case study. Okay? So this is Jan. She's a 28-year-old single mom with a 6-year-old daughter. She's currently attending school to obtain her high school diploma. I'm just going to go ahead and highlight that she's attending school. Jan works at a part-time job, 2 evenings a week and all day Sunday. She also receives mother's allowance so that she can finish school. Jan and her daughter live in a small 2-bedroom subsidized housing apartment where utilities are included in her rent. So she has as an expense the apartment where utilities are included in her rent. Okay, Jan goes to school when her child Jenna is also at school, so she has no daycare expenses on weekdays. Jan's sister looks after Jenna for free when Jan is at work. Jan pays her sister or another sitter when she goes out in the evenings. So I'm going to write that down as an expense. So she pays her sister or another sitter when she goes out in the evenings or on weekends with her friends. Sometimes Jan hires a babysitter. So she definitely hires a babysitter so that she's able to focus on her studies, to complete assignments, or to study for upcoming exams at the library. Jan had to pay $50 for an annual membership to the library where she can use their computers to do research. Jan can walk to her school from home, and her daughter is bused to school. Jan also walks to a local convenience store, but must take the bus to do other grocery shopping and marketing. So she has to pay for the bus to do her grocery shopping and anytime she's going to whatever market. So Jan often takes a taxi back. So I'll write that down if she's tired or has a lot to carry. Okay, so let's keep going. Jan has to work hard to make ends meet, so she usually shops for clothing for herself and her daughter at secondhand stores. So that would also be an expense. So shopping for clothing for herself and her daughter at secondhand stores. When Jan really wants clothing for a special occasion, she goes to her mother's to use the family sewing machine to make the item herself. Although Jan must be very careful about her spending, she buys coffee each day on her way to school. She always brings her lunch from home since she likes to work on homework and eat at the same time. In case of an emergency, Jan tries to put aside $20 a week as savings for a rainy day. So we'll highlight that. Okay, so now let's take a look at all of those expenses that we highlighted. And what we're going to do is we're going to determine whether these are discretionary or non-discretionary items or expenses and explain why. So let's take a look at that first one that was done for us. So apartment rent was one of the first things that we highlighted on our sheet. And this is a non-discretionary item because she must have a place to live. So we wrote non-discretionary, but then we explained why. Okay, so she must have a place to live. Okay, the next thing that we highlighted is babysitter. Okay, so we have babysitter, and I'm going to put for studying and leisure. Okay, because she hires a babysitter for both, sometimes when she needs to study for school and sometimes when she wants to go out. So, non discretionary, I would say for when she's studying. Okay, that's something that she has to do. And then I would say discretionary for when she's going out with friends. So again, non-discretionary is something that you can't cut out, okay, of your budget. Discretionary is something that, like, if you were tight for money one month, you could cut it out of your budget. And going out with friends, although it's really important to do and to hang out with friends, it's not something that you have to do all of the time. Okay, so our next expenditure that we highlighted was the library membership. And this again, I would say is non-discretionary, especially because she needs to use it for school and in particular, the computer. Okay, so it doesn't sound like she has access maybe to a computer at home or internet, something like that. So she needs to have that library membership. So the next thing we highlighted was transportation. And she had a couple things going on. I would say non-discretionary for when she takes the bus for groceries. That's something that has to happen, but discretionary for when she takes a taxi. Okay, so if she's tired or whatever. Sometimes when we're tired, we still can't afford that taxi and we're going to have to take the bus. Okay, so again, hopefully she has it in her budget to be able to take the taxi, but that's something that we could cut out if we needed to. The next thing that we highlighted was clothing expenses. And there are some that are non-discretionary, especially for the daughter. So clothes for the daughter. And that's not because, we want to buy the daughter or she wants to buy the daughter the newest running shoes that are out there. It's because kids grow and unfortunately they don't fit the same clothes that they wear year to year. So she's going to have to buy clothes for her daughter because her daughter's going to get bigger as she grows. Discretionary would be those clothes for herself. Okay. Although it doesn't sound like she spends a lot on clothes for herself, especially if she's going ahead and sewing some clothing for special occasions. That sounds pretty cool. Next thing on our list is coffee. Some people may argue with me that this is non-discretionary, but it definitely is discretionary because coffee is not a need. Again, I know some of you will argue with me about that, but she might be able to make coffee at home, which is a lot more economical. And again, if your budget's tight for the month, that might be something that you cut out every day and maybe you only do it on weekends, okay? And then lastly, She's putting money into savings, which is awesome. We would include some of that in non-discretionary, and that's when we're setting up an emergency fund. Okay. It's really important to have one of those, and that's a must have because things happen in life and we have to have some sort of savings to be able to deal with the things that come up that are unexpected. But also some of that is discretionary. So if you have a pretty good savings fund um, already put together, then maybe 1 month you don't need to put as much into your savings. So it is also just a nice to have. And sometimes when you're deciding between, you know, paying money for food or putting it in your savings, you're obviously going to choose food. So this is the summary of all of the things that our case study A, Jan, had talked about in terms of her expenses. Obviously, there's going to be other things that we didn't highlight or she didn't talk about, but this gives you an idea of what things are non-discretionary and discretionary. And now you're going to go ahead and do your own case study, and that's B, C, D, or E.